I'm going to call the meeting to order. We'll start with the consent agenda. If there's no issues with the previous minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make the motion.
Sarah's made the motion. Josh?
What was that again?
For the previous minutes, Sarah made the motion to accept them.
I'm having trouble hearing you guys. Hang on.
How about now, Josh? Can you hear us?
Yeah, that was clearer.
Okay.
Okay. Sarah made the motion to accept the previous minutes from last month's meeting. So I'm just need a roll.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. Sarah's, yeah. And Rachel?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, and next is the policies. We got F9 security cameras, F2 student conduct and discipline, D12 payment for work outside of the contract day, D13 electronic communications, E4 HIV bloodborne pathogens. That's all on the first read, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Any issues on those? Anything on those? Okay, entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Rich made the motion. Josh?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, and then on the second read, we had F21 student attendance, H1 Title I, and F25 lockers policy, and the F9 ER district choice policy. Any issues on those? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Sarah made a motion. Josh?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, do we need to reprioritize anything?
We do not.
Okay, so that brings us to recognition of visitors.
Actually, before I say that, Matt, was there something that you needed me to prioritize?
We're not doing the France trip,
Okay.
so no.
Okay. So we're good on that.
Okay.
You got that headset?
We're not doing the France
Yeah,
trip
do it.
yet.
The headphone fence.
Josh, you're not muted.
Okay, so no visitors. Brings us to the school spotlight. Kelly.
Okay. So I would like to welcome up Megan Fernandez. That's her real name, so come on up, Megan. So Megan is our full-time art teacher, and she's just joined us this year. And when I hired Megan, so prior to this, we were sharing a teacher with Enosburg. Now Enosburg has our former teacher. And when I hired Megan, one of the things that I talked to her about was that I really wanted to be able to start incorporating not just art, but the arts. So art, music, PE, into content areas some. And so having teachers be able to collaborate with our unified arts specialists on instruction. And so Megan has sort of started doing that this year as opportunities for kids to be able to show their learning in different ways, so that it's not just reading and writing. I mean, elementary school is so heavy on reading, writing, and math, and so kids are just often so required to show their learning through writing. And so I really wanted to get us to a place where we were starting to provide more engaging opportunities for kids, and for kids to also be able to see that the arts are not just a class, but that they can be used in lots of different ways. So Megan has started to do some collaborating with classroom teachers this year, and has just done a phenomenal job with the art that the kids are producing. So if you didn't on your way in, please take a couple of minutes to look at some of the art in the lobby when you walk out. We are having an art night Thursday night so that the kids can show off their work. But Megan, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can talk about what you're doing. Thank you.
That's okay.
Right, so as Kelly talked about, having art full-time at RES has allowed me to collaborate a little bit with the classroom teachers, where we're piloting a model where we co-plan lessons that teach art and teach an academic subject area at the same time. So art can be an excellent tool for providing a visual for abstract concepts, which one of the projects I'm going to talk about is based on that, and can help them show their learning in new ways. So one project that I wanted to kind of focus on was completed in the 3rd grade, and I have some little examples here. So these are mandalas. So we started by learning about the cultural significance of mandalas as a representation of the circle of life. And traditionally mandalas are made out of sand by Buddhist monks, and it's kind of a meditative practice. They'll lay the mandalas out with sand, and then at the end they'll wipe them away. So we started by teaching that, and then combined this project with math. So we gave students a circle that was divided into 4 or 6 sections and some shaped blocks. And they were asked to divide them equally between the sections as a way to provide a visual for division. So each of these mandalas have a fact family that goes along with them. So you can see that this student wrote here, my parallelogram fact family. So they're counting the parallelograms that are in their art to be able to solve these math equations. 3 times 4 equals 12. So they could see that in the 4 sections of the mandala, there were 3 parallelograms in each section. These mandalas are made out of colored sand. So for the art portion of that, we did learn how to apply the sand color by color to make these shapes on their mandala. The second project that we did was in 2nd grade, and this was a writing project. On the next slide, I have a little video from a student who's talking about this project, so we can do that as the intro to that.
Hi guys, I made a salt map with my art teacher, and it's an opinion writing. It's an art and writing song, and these green bumps right here are the mountains, like JP Mountain and other mountains, I guess. Right here is Lake Champlain, Missisquoi River, Lake Carmine, and Lake Willoughby. These are my both favorite places, Get Air and 99. They're both really fun places. You should visit them. This is my opinion salt map. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, so she's really cute. So for this project, it was an opinion writing project where the prompt was, what is your favorite place in Vermont? That's the next thing, that's fine. So students were creating a writing piece that was about their favorite place in Vermont. And they also were learning about the different features of the state, like the mountains, the lakes, and different geography. The art portion of this, we made salt dough, which is made out of salt, flour, water. So we made the dough together with the students and then learned different pinching techniques to create the mountains and lowering it for the valleys. And the maps were painted, and they made a air dry clay little sculpture of their favorite place that we then glued on that would represent what they wrote about in their writing. So for example, a lot of students, I know the student in the video chose Get Air as her favorite place. So I know one of them did Get Air and sculpted a little trampoline that they then glued onto the map. Just a couple of other ways that we're bringing art throughout the school outside of art class. I've been running a pre-K skills group, So with the preschoolers, they have their art class time, but this is a separate time that I'll visit their classroom. And I'm pulling students in small groups and focusing in on just one art skill that has to do with fine motor. So it could be using scissors, it could be just learning how to use a glue stick, just learning how to hold a paintbrush. And I found that having that isolated skill has really shown their growth during their art time, so that it's helping get them ready for kindergarten. I am also doing an art club with second graders where we're pulling small groups of students just for 15 minutes during their snack time to have a little bit of an extra art time. For that, I'm giving them a lot more open choice than I would in their regular art class, where they usually have a directed assignment. So they're telling me what they want to draw, if they want it to be a drawing, a painting, a collage, and then I'm helping support them making that. I found that that's helped a lot with students who are really talented in art and just would like to have a little bit extra above and beyond, but it's also helped with some students who are practicing in social settings. So I have a student that in the beginning of the year had some pretty significant behavior challenges in art, and then he started coming to art club with me, and all of the issues we were having in the beginning of the year are gone. It's been able to help me form relationships with those students outside of art, so that when they do come to art, they know that it's a safe place that they can work and learn. Yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
That was great, Megan. Thank you.
So we're looking to, like, I wanna work with both Megan and, our librarian has also done a little bit of work, like sort of, and I believe that she was
Yeah.
part of the third
In the
grade
mandalas,
piece too, right?
she came and read a book that was about Tibet, that the kid, that showed like the monks making the mandalas that we showed around as they were making them. And she also came and read a book about different features of Vermont. I think M is for maple syrup during the salt map project.
So looking next year to just increase even more, like some, in creating some time for the teachers, our classroom teachers to be able to really collaborate with UA teachers to create some units or lessons around different ways to engage kids in the arts.
I think it's an incredible idea to really improve engagement with kids and get to, some kids might struggle with a content area, but they might have a passion in one of the arts, and to be able to integrate those is really smart, strategic.
And some kids just struggle with like the, having a class once or twice a week.
Yeah.
And it just, so I think like the art club was really targeted to some kids that, it just really helped them. And I think the whole pre-K thing too is just, that has just been, being able to just really target those individual skills has been great, so. I guess it's been a great addition. The hallways look amazing the vast majority of the time. A lot of stuff's pulled down right now because she's got it ready for the art show.
Yeah.
The hallways look great, so it's been really nice.
It's awesome. We're happy to have you, Megan.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Kelly, I appreciate you choosing this spotlight, because shifting last year to having art full-time was a decision that we made collectively to now be able to see what kind of student opportunities have come as a result of that decision is powerful. So thank you for bringing that as your spotlight.
Okay, all right, next is Morgan, financial report.
Okay, so we have not yet received a draft of your audit, so I'm not bringing that to you tonight. Nothing really to discuss in terms of the FY24 budget year that we're currently in. Lynn and I are going to tag team in a little bit on the budget development for round 3 of the budget. And so the only action item that I would have from you is for a motion to enter into a contract with Lime Green Heat for the Richford High School wood chip boiler project. We did get the waiver to select them. We had only received 2 bids, and under current law for the next 6 weeks, I guess, you need to have 3 bids or request a waiver. So that process has come through.
Okay. All right, I entertain a motion to accept or enter into a contract with Lime Green Heat for the Richford High School boiler project.
I'll make the motion.
Sarah made a motion. Josh?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
And I don't have any others, so I will pass it on.
All right.
Thank you.
Do you want to do the budget first, or do you want to do my items?
We might as well go into the budget first, since we're already talking about it.
So Courtney is going to put our slideshow up. And as Morgan said, we will tag team, we'll go back and forth with this presentation. If you have questions, go ahead and jump in with those questions. So, as you all know, the second version of the budget was defeated. It was closer the second time than it was the first time. I didn't actually start, I had intended to do the spread and I didn't, but we have some work to do to develop our third round of the budget. So we have put some things together for us to talk through today. So here are your objectives for tonight's work. So we need to review and revise the FY25 UUSD budget. We are going to need to decide at the end of the night what to do about the authority to borrow piece, and we have some added information about that we'll share. We'll need to determine, probably connected to that authority to borrow, what's the date for the next UUSD budget vote, and then we'll need to, you could either make a decision tonight about where you're going to go with the reductions in the budget, or you could instruct us to schedule another board meeting, probably early next week, to finalize and warn the next budget vote. So that will be up to the board. Anything you want to add there? So at the very end, we'll come back to this. Basically, similar to what I just said, your things tonight, you have to figure out what you're going to do about the warning period, and that is connected to the authority to borrow. We would like direction around the informational meetings, and you'll need to determine what's the date of your next vote. Anytime we talk about the budget, we want to remind you of the goals that we established as a supervisory union. So we know that we are working collectively to get all students to read on grade level by the end of grade 3 by June of 2027. We know that the class of 2028 and beyond, that's next year's freshman class, will use a body of evidence from courses and or other flexible pathways to demonstrate proficiency in the portrait of a learner indicator skills required for graduation. And we know that by June of 2027, all students in FNESU will demonstrate proficiency by the end of each grade level band on the social emotional learning SEL priority standards. So we remind you of those goals so that you have that fresh in your mind as you're making decisions tonight about what will remain and what will not remain in the budget as we move forward.
So I've talked to you about the yield a lot more this year than in any time in the past. It has still been a moving target. As you probably heard, the legislature adjourned on Saturday. The Senate version that was sent over to the House had the yield at $10,005. So we have been using $10,000 in round 2 as the target, and we actually came in right at that amount. The House reduced it by about $100 and change in order to increase the income sensitivity payments in the bill, and so that has dropped it down, and that was the version that was passed on Saturday and is on its way to the governor's desk. He has indicated that he plans to veto the bill. We won't know that probably for another week or so, but the legislature has scheduled a session in June, I think around the 21st, to either try to override it or to submit a new bill and to deal with any of the other bills that he vetoes between now and then. That session will impact the final yield number. And so unless the governor signs it, which is unlikely, we have a pretty good idea of roughly where it's going to end up. We don't think it'll be lower than the 98, 93, but we don't have a final number yet. My plan is if we warn a budget before the governor acts, we'll use the 98, 93. If the budget is vetoed before, if the bill is vetoed before the budget is warned, we'll continue to use that 10,000, which I still think is going to be more accurate. And so we talked about the dollar floor in the last few meetings as well. That yield number is really what sets the floor. So if it's at 10,000, if you fall below 10,000 per pupil in terms of your spending, you're basically leaving money on the table. If it's at 98, 93, if you fall below that number, you're leaving money on the table. Again, the governor is not likely vetoing this because he wants the yield number to go down. He wants it to go up to be able to say that he's saved everyone in terms of their property taxes. So as we have these budget discussions, we're going to have to decide how comfortable you feel getting down to that floor.
And I just want to say that we talked a lot about the dollar floor last time, and we had greater uncertainty last time about where the places are that we could end with the yield. We don't know what the governor is going to do. We don't know if there will be a supermajority that overrides a veto. We don't know any of those things, but we're within a range now of knowing that dollar yield. So I think our focus last time was rightly on the wide variability that we could have seen with that yield, and I mean it's still difficult to predict, but I'm focusing a little less on that dollar floor right now. One of the things we will do as we get closer to talking about where we're going to land with our budget is having a conversation, and this came out at an informational meeting with people over at Richford High School during the version 2 of the budget. And it came out at the end of the conversation. People were really trying to ask questions about if we reduced to the dollar floor, if we went all the way down there. And for those that might be listening that haven't heard this before, you cannot pay less than $1 in your district tax rate. And in our version 2 of our budget, we were at $1.05, $1.04 something. So nearly $1.05. So the theory was if we cut too far and it pushed us down to 98 cents or 99 cents in our tax rate, that money was going to go back to the state and it would actually cut opportunities without providing any kind of benefit to the taxpayers. So one thing I've asked Morgan to think about, and we'll talk about that a little later, is even if that was your strategy, even if you knew what the yield was going to land on and you cut to the dollar floor, the amount of money that would actually save a taxpayer versus the amount of impact you're going to have on your services that you provide your students, you're going to have to think about that. You're going to have to think about, where do you want your target to land? Okay, so he's going to be prepared when we get there to talk a little more about that. So I'm just going to set the stage a little bit with some facts before we get into any deeper conversation. So in the second version of our budget that we projected, the Enosburg-Richford district had dropped to the 9th lowest spending district in Vermont per pupil. As you know from our conversations last time, only 4 districts, there were 4 districts below Enosburg-Richford that did not operate schools. Okay, so that means there were only 4 districts below us that spent less that did operate schools in the state. So we took a look at tax rates. So in what we projected the last time, the FY25 projection was 12 cents lower than what we had projected in FY24, this current year that we're in. And then we took a look back and said, when we merged in that first budget that we built, where was our tax rate? The second version of this budget, our tax rate 5 years ago was 26. We are now 26 cents lower than we were 5 years ago in that district tax rate when we first merged.
We also looked, tried to project out, looking specifically at tax rates after CLA, in terms of what we know has been passed in other districts and where we're anticipating the 26 who haven't passed budgets are going to end up. And my best guess is that Richford will be 259 out of 260 in terms of towns where their tax rate is. And then you can see here on the chart, we had this in the information we sent out in the round 2 meetings, showing what your FY24 taxes would be on a $100,000 home and what your FY25 taxes would be projected on a $100,000 home. If you look in that Richford column again, the lowest that number at the bottom right can go is $928. So if you close 2 schools and cut $10 million out of your budget, a $100,000 home is still going to generate $928 in tax bill. 2/3 of the residents in your districts receive a property tax credit. So they're somewhat, not fully, but somewhat insulated against budget increases. And it looks like if the provision that the House has put in, that property tax credit will actually be higher to apply to those FY25 bills.
And I think we didn't really talk about that much last time, but I think it's important that people remember that what you're projecting out when you calculate what your home value is and what you're actually going to pay in your taxes, how much it will be impacted by that income sensitivity formula. I think one of the things that we really struggled to communicate about in version 1 and version 2 of the budget had to do with what happened here in Richford in last year. So the community of Richford did a property reappraisal, and as a result of the reappraisal, their property values increased pretty significantly. So community members in Richford felt a pretty sharp increase in the amount of tax that they were spending. In reality, the reason that you do reappraisals is to make sure that people are paying kind of their market fair share of what their properties are valued at. So it was trying to right size Richford in terms of that impact. So that reappraisal dropped their property tax rate really low after the CLA last year. The CLA actually overvalues in year 1 typically of a reappraisal. And so you saw that happen last year where your CLA was at 135%. Now the CLA is kind of correcting itself this year. So your property values in Richford have grown from last year to this year. So it was a sharper increase than you saw in other communities. So I think that was a piece that people were not really completely understanding. And I think the information that we have up there today is to just help people to understand that we know that there was a hit because of the reappraisal, but at the same time, I think we have to look at the total picture. So when we dug into what are tax rates around Vermont, the actual tax rate in Richford, we think is the second lowest in the state in terms of what our second version of the budget was. And we wanted people to really take a look at per $100,000 of appraised value, what's that comparison between our 2 communities?
So at the informational meeting in Richford, Wally Steenhauer said that he didn't understand. He asked a really good question, and the answer didn't come to me till later. There were a few questions asked there that I'm not sure that we answered well. But Wally was saying that if our CLA is over 100%, then he doesn't understand how it could negatively impact our tax rate because it's still over 100. Of course, it dropped from like 130 something to 107. But when you apply the CLA to the tax rate, the proposed tax rate, which was $1.04 something, it did positively impact that because our tax rate went down to like 98 cents in Richford. And because he kept saying, well, he didn't understand how Enosburg wasn't because their tax rate is 74 cents. And it did. But or their CLA.
Yeah.
I meant
74%. Yeah.
So I think that the confusing thing is that you guys, the two of you, were talking about the change in tax rate from last year to this year being negatively impacted by the change in Richford CLA, but it still positively impacts the tax rate overall.
Correct, because the
Right.
$4, which would be applied at the district level,
Right.
would have a bigger impact. Their CLA brings that $4 down to 98 cents.
Exactly. It's
Thank you for
confusing.
clarifying that.
Yeah, and you can see that on the graph that shows the district tax rate kind of running in the middle,
Right.
and then Enosburg's running higher and Richford's running lower.
So here are some other facts as I'm thinking about, the narrative that's happening across Vermont. I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the statewide narrative. There are some facts that people aren't talking about as much as I would like them to, and I think that if you live in Vermont, you've listened to the news. It's about education spending in Vermont, and I agree. We have a problem with how we're funding public education in Vermont, and I think that there are some root causes that have not been accurately or adequately reflected in the media coverage. So I'm going to start with a little bit of this. So before we spend any money in our schools, because all of our spending kind of goes into one big fund, the Vermont Education Fund. Before we spend $1 in our schools, there are things that you add to that Vermont Education Fund. The things on the right, there's a combination of things that we have had to take on because of our circumstance, and there are things that we have had to take on because they have been legislatively mandated. So I'm going to talk about a few of those things. We now offer universal pre-kindergarten to all of our students, so we actually have a tuitioning system where families can take their pre-K tuition dollars outside of our public schools. They can go to private pre-K programs, and we pay, I don't remember what the total is, 3,000 something per. Morgan's going to think on that.
3,600, 700.
Around 3,700 per pupil for that tuition. We also fund the after-school programs. Their PCB testing was something that the legislature passed that is costing the state millions of dollars, and we're actually in a place now where we have more to mitigate than what we have set aside, so that's going to be a perpetuating problem, because now that we have positives, we all have to correct the tests that have come up as positive. Schools circumstantially have had to take on more of the social services tasks and the mental health tasks. We've had underfunded systems that historically support us in public education, and the services that used to be available are not. And they're able to say that they're understaffed and they can't take on more, and we cannot. We're the only system that can't say that. So we take on all the tasks. We take on every child that comes to our door every day, no matter what their needs are. We pay tuition to some students, not all students, but some students for religious schools. We pay private school tuition for some students. We pay for PCB remediation that goes along with that PCB testing. We also pay for radon testing. We pay for high school students to take dual enrollment courses. That was something, a lot of what I just mentioned was legislatively mandated. We pay for seniors to attend early college, so their first year of college is paid for out of the education fund. We pay for lead testing in our drinking water, and we pay for universal school meals. That was passed, I believe, last legislative session, and I believe that was $35 million off the top of the education fund. So all of that goes into that bucket before you even start thinking about what's happening in our schools. So when we talk about the problem in the education fund, we have to think about all of it. So when the legislature and all of us are looking for solutions, we have to make sure that we're thinking about what we can control locally and what's happening at the state level that's having an impact on all of us. Here are some other facts. We know, because we were impacted by this, that there was a district consolidation that occurred under Act 46 in Vermont. Through that Act 46 process, some schools closed, some districts merged, and we are here together tonight as a part of Act 46. Enosburg and Richford used to be two single districts. They were merged under the Act 46 state order into one unified union school district. So even after all of the mergers that happened, we still in Vermont operate a lot of schools and a lot of systems. We operate nearly 300 schools. In FNESU, with the exception of our CTE center, our smallest school serves just under 150 students. And in Vermont, there are 93 schools that are smaller than FNESU's smallest school. 69 of those schools serve fewer than 100 students. 17 of those schools serve 50 or fewer students, and 4 of those schools serve 25 or fewer students. So when we're looking at and thinking about the education fund, we also need to think about the root cause of nearly 25% of Vermont schools serve fewer than 100 students. So we have to think about not only what we're spending money on in our schools, but also how many schools can we afford to be operating as a state, because that all contributes to the overall education fund problem. So as you're thinking tonight about budget decisions and considerations, there are several things that you need to think about. You need to think about, like, what trajectory are we on? Are we on the path where it's going to be death by 1,000 cuts in our individual school district budgets? Because that's what we're doing right now. These principals and Morgan and I met and we went through our budgets, and we had some very painful conversations about what we're going to invest in and what we're going to recommend in terms of those cuts. And all those cuts that we make impact our students, and it impacts what we can offer in terms of programming. And it also impacts, it has an impact on the future enrollment of your schools as well. Or we could look at it in terms of long-term affordability. So one thing I'm going to ask you to think about is there are going to be, Morgan's going to talk during the legislative update around some of the things that were passed in that yield bill around studying the long-term changes that will come as a result of this crisis with the education fund. And they're going to be, some of the things are going to be targeted at reducing costs by looking at individual school district budgets. But there's also going to have to be conversations about, our operational, what configurations do we have in our schools and how many schools are we operating. So as a board, you should be thinking about, are you at the place where you want to charge us with starting to do some research in terms of exploring what are all the possible operational considerations that we could have here in FNESU? Are there school structures that we could explore that still include 5 school buildings, or maybe don't include 5 school buildings? Are there some combinations? Are there some other configurations? There are probably dozens of ways we could look at that. We have not started to explore those things because truthfully that hasn't been something that we've gotten from our board, but we're here now and we're talking about a third budget, and we're probably not going to have that answer before our teachers leave. And having this issue about not getting a budget approved is hard, and it's going to have an impact on our schools now and into the future. So I don't know if you want me to stop there or if you want to come back to that, but
We'll come back to that.
okay. So when you think about the operational considerations in this budget, you need to be thinking about your current students and those things that you choose to cut. What impact will that have? If, going back to that idea of death by 1,000 cuts, what impact does that have on the kids we have right now? And the other thing I just want to remind this board of is that we are a district that relies on tuition students. We rely heavily on the revenue that we receive from students who choose to come to our 2 high schools and to our CTE center. And we have spent some time looking at how much we're spending per pupil compared to other systems right near us in our county. So one of the things we need to think about is what's the future implication about the decisions we make in this budget, because anything you cut, if you choose to add it in the future, it's going to be harder to put that back in over time. What implications will that have on students and families who are considering choosing one of our high schools to attend? Will we cross a threshold where we will start to lose people's support of our budget because we've cut too much? Or will we cross a threshold where people will look at how much more per pupil neighboring districts are spending and how many more opportunities they can offer than we can? Because that might be a penny wise decision that we could make right now because our taxpayers are sending us that message, but it also might be a dollar foolish decision that we make right now because it might have a longer term impact in terms of reducing our future revenue because we're not attracting as many tuition students. Things I want you to just think about as we do this work. Another piece that I think we have to just name is we had been on a trajectory with the Cold Hollow construction project. And I think that given where we are in the state with the instability of the education fund, I think that my recommendation to this board would be to delay that project from moving forward to voters. I think I still feel good that we have done the work that we've done so far because we have a governor who is very supportive of CTE centers, and he has tipped that he would be in favor of construction aid, I believe, related to CTE centers. So what we have now is the ability to we have a plan that is close to being ready to send out for review. And if down the road the Vermont Ed Fund stabilizes and there's construction aid that's available, we could be pretty ready to put a proposal out for any grants that might come out in terms of aid. Okay? Any questions on any of that? You can stop me. So what we'll be looking from this board tonight is around your direction. Are you going to be in a position where you give us a dollar target and say, we want you to cut to this level? Or are you going to say, these are the programs and the staffing decisions that we want you to make? So we have done the pre-work, and as I said, that was tough to go through because this is the third time we've done it now. So you just be thinking as we are talking through these next places, are we going to talk dollars or are we going to talk which lines?
So we've also talked about the authority to borrow, and that's related to the salaries and the commitments that we make on July 1 going through mid-September when we get our first installment of aid from the state through about October, November when we start to collect that tuition revenue, and we get to a point where we, at that point, tend to have enough cash to keep the ship afloat. When the second budget went down, I reached out to our bank to just let them know the situation, let them know that we still didn't have the borrowing article passed, and asked them if they had any advice or any steps that I should be taking to prepare us for paying the principals on July 5th. What they told me is that when they check with their legal counsel, they're willing to lend us money as soon as we get a budget passed. They don't care so much about the borrowing article. That's contradictory to what our lawyers have told us. There's a lot of contradictory stuff after talking with other business managers in a similar situation where even different partners from the same firm are giving conflicting advice about that article. One reason why it's relevant is that article requires a 30 to 40 day warning, but a budget revote only requires a 7 to 10 day warning. So if we are not going after that article, we can turn budget votes around quicker. And then if we go into July 1 without a passed budget, there's another provision in statute that allows us to borrow money, and the banks will support that. And so the decision point at some point tonight is whether we want to still list that article on the ballot, either in deference to legal counsel, even though the bank doesn't need it, or because we're concerned that changing things up now are going to cause people to spin a story that's, not true, and just give folks something to point at, fuel to actually torpedo the underlying budget vote.
Were there questions about this at the informational meeting? I missed them, I was gone, but did people talk about this at all? Like, did they have questions about it?
We brought it up.
Yeah.
There were no questions,
Okay.
and my sense is that, once a budget passes, the article also passes. And it's just people are still angry and sending a message to someone other than those of you who now have to cut a budget because you got that message.
So it might make sense to address this part now, Mort,
Yes.
before we go further.
Okay. What's your feelings on it? Rachel?
I mean, I just feel like I feel like we need to talk about it, but at the same time, we've already, it's been twice, so I don't know what good it would really do either, because I feel like we've given a lot of information, more so than I've ever seen. So I don't know.
Would you rather do the first one or the second one? The two articles together or the one article?
So for two articles together, you have to wait 30 to 40 days. And otherwise, and then if you do the 7 to 10 days, that passes, the bank's saying that they'll let the borrow into the money.
Yeah, our bank does not care about the borrowing article.
Okay.
I think the one worry that I'll just say out loud, I totally support the board if you make the decision to go to the 7 to 10 days, is I worry that the taxpayers would question why we had it before and we don't have it now. And I think that we've seen several examples of misinformation that has gotten spun in a way that has been damaging, and that's my only reservation about this. I believe Morgan, and I also see by talking with colleagues throughout the state that some have it, some don't have it, some have felt like they needed it, some haven't, and the legal counsel's feedback on that or recommendation on that has differed. So I think that we're legally okay to do either option. I just worry that there would be a negative narrative spun.
Yeah, perception on it. I'd go with the first article. With doing both articles in it.
Like we did before.
Like we've always
So what
done.
are we talking for a date?
If we got something in the paper this Friday, the 17th, I think you could vote on June 17th. And I say that not having checked in with town clerks yet. Which is the last day of school, or June 18th, which is the Tuesday. Certainly if you wanted to take another week in terms of budget decisions tonight, that would push us to the last week of June. And I haven't really thought this through so much, but my gut tells me if we go to the last week of June with a third budget vote, at that point, if it is defeated, we will probably have the banks lined up to give us a loan on the second, under the provision that we don't have a passed budget. And so if we do that, we don't need to go back for that article the next round if we don't want to.
The fourth
We could
round.
turn it
Because we
around
will have
7
already
to 10
borrowed the
days,
money. And we could turn around round 4 a little quicker.
I say go with both articles for June 18th.
So
That works.
it's possible we could land there if you make your decisions tonight.
Right.
But if you get to a place where you say, you give us a dollar amount and you say, you all go back and do this and come back with what the strategies are gonna be, we already have some prioritized lists. Honestly, we probably could caucus tonight and make some of those decisions if you wanted to get this through tonight. So the two options would be May 17th for warning, and June 18th for a vote, or May 23rd for a warning, and June 27th for a vote.
I feel more comfortable with the second one.
May
Just in
23rd,
case, yeah.
June 27th.
Gives us some time. Do that. Josh, anything on that? Any input on that?
Nothing to add to it. You guys doing everything you can.
5th of June, it's a Tuesday, or do we not care?
Could do it like that. But
Is your May 23rd warning? I thought you told me that. These are the numbers that I
Yeah.
originally given me.
Okay.
is it still, if we do 523 and 625,
I'll figure that out.
we're gonna count some days to make sure that we have the numbers right, but we'll keep going while Morgan's figuring that out.
Okay.
So, my intention is not to go line by line, position by position, because these leaders and Morgan and I have done that work. We're going to talk with you about the general categories. So what's on the table right now, before I get into this, I just want to remind you that our teachers, our existing teachers, are under contract. Those contracts went out on April 1st. So there's nothing in here that's talking about an existing teacher, okay? So there are some instructional positions that would be in what we have considered around version 3 of the budget. There is additional tuition revenue that I would love for Morgan to talk about.
So again, when the budget failed the second time, I reached out to the 4 NMV principals and asked them to survey their 8th graders to see where they were thinking at this point that they're going to go to high school. Historically, we've just looked at an average of how many of those 8th graders tend to end up in one of your 2 schools and use that. When they went in and surveyed the kids, there were about 10 more kids than I had budgeted for. And so that gives us the opportunity to capture some of that in revenue. It doesn't drop the bottom line of your spending plan, it doesn't drop the budget, but it drops your ed spending, which drops the tax rate. I don't think you want to count on all 10, but there's some room there to expect additional revenue.
Other considerations in this next round of reductions would be around instructional support, so paraeducator positions. There are some in this round. Another consideration is the school nurse model that we have in FNESU, and this is something that I have talked with other leaders around the state about. When COVID hit, we made a shift around our nursing models, and we added some positions to make them all full-time. And so we currently have full-time registered nurses in all of our buildings. The ed quality standards require that we have one full-time RN or associate nurse per 500 students. So we're way under that ratio. So we have way more nurses than what are required under EQS. I am not proposing reducing any of the nurses that you currently have. I'm looking at a model shift that we could accomplish through natural attrition as people leave. And I know that this is something that others around the state are also thinking of, because we have a nursing shortage in Vermont, like the teacher shortage. We also have a nursing shortage. So in this model, we have one nurse who is retiring at the end of this school year in this district. And so rather than replacing that nurse with a full-time RN, we could replace that nurse with a full-time LNA or medical assistant, and an RN can delegate. They actually, as school principals, they've all been delegated to by their school nurses to be able to act in their absence, and you could delegate to an LNA or a medical assistant. So we would be shifting the model. I don't know which schools that would land on. We'd be looking at the ed quality standards, and I'd be talking to the remaining nurses to come up with where would that shift happen, to try to brainstorm the best way to do that. So that's one option. And there's also athletics. that would be not all of it. I want to clarify. We're not proposing that we would completely cut athletics, but we had made some budget decisions around athletics when we built our first budget, and we would have to pull those back and level fund where we are at around athletics. And then the final is around contracted services, and I can't talk about contracts in open session, so I would ask for the board to take us into executive to talk about that. And I'd like to keep Morgan and the principals.
Okay. Do you want to do that now, or you want to do that at the end?
I think now.
Okay. All right, so, need a motion to go into executive. Sarah made a motion, Josh?
Yeah,
Rachel? I'm an aye. All right. Need a motion to exit the meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Sarah made the motion, Josh?
aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Okay, next we need a motion on, for the superintendent to act on the results from the executive session on the contractor services.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Rachel made the motion, Josh?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
So what I'm going to ask you to decide on now is, are we in the right place? Are these the programs in places that you want us to come back with a number about? Like, in terms of I'll give you a little bit more detail before I'll restate that question after I give you a little more detail. So in terms of instructional positions, go back to my spreadsheet. There is, we've been able to figure out a reduction that we can make in the flexible pathways staffing structure there. As Morgan stated, there's some additional revenue that we could apply to this budget. And there are some reductions that we could make in terms of paraeducator staffing in some of our buildings. I already talked to you about the school nurse model, so it would be reducing by one FTE, one full-time nurse, and then it would be adding a support staff level position so that the nurses would, when they were in a building, the support staff position would be in the other building that they cover, and they would flip. In terms of athletics, I want to just be really clear that at this point in version 3 of the budget, we're not proposing reductions in offerings or teams. One of the things that we did as we were building the first version of the budget, Act 127 was a bill that was passed. It was intended to benefit communities like ours, who have been historically disadvantaged by the funding model. So when we met and we talked about what are we going to put into version 1 of the budget, because we had that added capacity of the weights, we added some additional funding in for our athletic programs. So our thought was we had some places where we hadn't quite budgeted enough in the past in terms of game officials and transportation and things like that. But we also have not been investing very heavily in terms of equipment and other things for our athletic programs. So we put some money into that first budget because we were looking at it through the lens of opportunity. So we would level fund that, and we would pull that added expense out. Anything you want to add to that? So just clarifying again. Not considering at this point in this version reducing teams or programs, but the money that would support those would come back off the table. So, and the other, you just gave me direction in executive session around that contracted service. So I need to hear whether or not we're in the right kind of place for you as a board in looking at reducing in those areas.
I'm good with this right here. Just need the numbers on it.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want us to go back out, do the work we need to do around contracted services, and come back with a number
Yes.
around this? So we'll reschedule another meeting. Okay. And Morgan has been jotting some notes down on the side, so it looks like we would need to get this budget warned by May 21st, which is a week from today. So is the 20th enough time, Morgan?
That would be enough time. We could go probably a day or so later if needed. The 21st is your normal night of the week meeting, so I assume that was gonna be okay. And if we do that, then I can get it in the paper for the 24th, and that will be time enough for a Tuesday, June 25th vote.
So you're proposing next Tuesday, June 21st is our meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
May 21st.
I mean, May, sorry. So our next meeting would be May 21st. So can I want to hear from the 4 who are here, how many of you could attend if it was next Tuesday?
I can.
I should
You
probably check.
cannot. Josh, how about you?
What was the date again?
Next Tuesday, May 21st,
What time are you thinking?
6 o'clock?
Should be able to make it work.
And where would that be?
It would be in Enosburg at the elementary school, Courtney?
Well, our June meeting is
Special
at
meeting.
Enosburg.
Oh, it's special meeting.
I will be virtual.
Okay. So, do we
But it
want
could be
to
at our
offer the
office.
20th? Oh, we could,
We do virtual.
you could do it virtually, or we could do it at central office. It's a special meeting.
You know what?
Either one.
We'll do central office.
So I'm wondering if you wanna give us your approval for the 20th or the 21st so that we can survey and make sure that we get a quorum. Is that what you were trying to say to me?
Yes, that's weird.
So can the 4 of you make the
I
20th?
can do the 20th.
I can make 20.
Yes.
Josh, can you do Monday the 20th?
At 6 also?
Yes.
Yeah, that should be fine.
I would go with that because you have a quorum.
Okay. So we'll just plan on Monday the 20th. And administrators, can you put that in your calendar as well?
Central office?
Does that work?
Is this like the last special meeting that we're allowed to zoom in? Or would you like us there in person?
I think if you could be there in person, because we're gonna get right down to the nitty gritty on this. I think it would be helpful in this. I should have asked you, Mark. What do you think? If they can be there in person or virtually?
I'd rather have them be in person, but if not, I'll do it.
It's it's Monday, so it's perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So, I'm gonna just keep going, if that's okay. So, this was version 3, and I just wanted to give, from the work that Morgan and I did with all of the building principals, we looked at if we needed to go further than what this represents, what would be next that we would have to consider cuts for. So that's what this reflects. So if there's another version that's needed for our budget, I'm hoping not. These would be the 4 categories in order that we would be looking at. So there would be some student support positions. There's some additional teacher / paraeducator positions that we'd be considering. There are some other support staff positions in there. And there's money that we have earmarked for facilities improvements in our buildings. And that didn't land super high on the list because we've spent a lot of years not investing a lot of money in our facilities. And that's another thing that we're in trouble with in the state of Vermont is deferred maintenance on a lot of buildings in our schools. So this is a pretty big part of your investment as a school district is the facilities that your kids attend. So if we needed to make a reduction in facilities, we could do it, but we'd be putting some work off somewhere. So, any questions on that? Okay. So back to the timeline, it looks like we're gonna try to warn that budget by 5/23. We'll have our meeting on 5/20. Our vote will be on June 25th.
June 25th.
And we need direction from the board around informational meetings.
Is there a certain criteria for those?
You have to have at least one.
And 10 days before.
Yes.
Within 10 days, yep. I would say one on the 18th, or June 18th. Is there 10 days?
Yeah.
7 days before that.
And the other one doesn't really matter, right, so June the 11th,
So we'll have two different ones, one for each.
right around that two different
You
ones.
need to have one within 10 days. And yeah, we'd recommend that you have one in each community.
So you're talking,
Where do you want to do the June 18th meeting?
We did Richford last time, so Enosburg this time.
Okay. High school?
Yes.
Which is the official one at Enosburg last time.
And we did the physical
Yep.
one, and,
yeah, we did, that was the
That's
last
right.
one,
okay, so we'll do Richford this time.
Okay.
Get back
on
first.
the 18th.
On the-
So June 18th will be Richford High School?
Yep.
And then are you saying, what's the time that you're wanting for your informational meetings?
Time we do last time?
Six.
This is fair.
6? Yeah.
Baseball's over by then, right?
On the 18th, it is the week before, so.
Okay,
The 11th.
so 6 o'clock.
So
What's the 18th?
Enosburg,
Enosburg. 6 o'clock as well.
6 o'clock.
What did you say for that date?
June 11th, 6 o'clock in Enosburg.
That's your June meeting night.
It is.
So you could make that a part of your board meeting. You could start with an informational meeting,
Yeah.
and that one is at Enosburg.
So that works.
Is that Enosburg Elementary School?
Yes.
That's okay.
Do you feel okay about having an informational meeting there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so I feel like we got our timeline all set. And now, in terms of communication planning, I think if you could skip a slide, Courtney. I think one of the things that I think is important this time is around board participation in the communication around this budget, kind of beyond our informational meetings. Because I think that I would like to think that people come out to listen to Morgan and I talk, but I think they'd be more likely to listen to you all talking about the budget and the impact and kind of the pain that you're going through in terms of the reductions. So I want you to think about, as a board, in what ways you can work as a member of each of your communities to help people to understand what we're contending with. I think that in terms of communication planning, one thing that we have talked about is what's the message that the community is trying to send. We've heard from multiple people it's a message to Montpelier. Well, Montpelier's done. The legislative session ended at midnight on Friday, so no one's listening in Montpelier right now. So I'm hoping that's not the message that they're going to send again. One of the things that Mort and I talked about in our pre-meeting for this is thinking about how can we use, there are some people in each community, both Enosburg and Richford, who are really active and interested in seeing this budget get approved. So could we do some work outside of the board meeting to create kind of a community coalition where we could help them with the information and try to get them to engage with other community members? Because we do all the informational sessions, we create the videos, we post them, we send them out, but we have very low participation in our informational meetings. So, I mean, I think that this is part of it, is trying to get people, if you know people, board members, if you know people, trying to get them June 11th, June 18th, come out to our meetings and listen. Because I think that's one of the things that we're battling, is people not being informed about what's really going on here. So.
Could you send things out in the mail for the informational meetings?
The mail costs us a lot of money, Rachel. And that's, I wanna hear from you about what do you want us to do? I'll be honest, that last mailer cost $3,600 to mail one thing. So it's not cheap to do that, and at the same time, you know, everybody wants something a little bit different around our communication. Too much information is not enough information. Give us more detail, keep it simpler. Like, we get it from all aspects, all the way around us. We've utilized our website. We utilized Front Porch Forum last time. We utilized Facebook. We did the mailer. We could still do a mailer. We could try to simplify. It would be less than that because it would be these 2 towns. But it would actually be more than these 2 towns, because you have addresses that would also include Enosburg residents. Is it Enosburg and
The way that we mail it out, it goes by zip code, so everyone in Berkshire is going to get one. Half the people in Montgomery are going to get one.
Yeah.
A chunk of people in Bakersfield probably get mail out of Enosburg. And so Sheldon may get some. So there's going to be a lot of that happening, and that's probably not going to help the narrative.
So the way the voting broke down, Rachel was mentioning to me that it wasn't Enosburg actually passed.
Enosburg passed by 19 votes.
Okay.
And Richford was defeated by just under 100.
Was it 80?
It was like
80?
99.
99.
There was a,
Both.
it was, so it got defeated by 80 votes overall,
Right.
between the 2 communities.
Both.
Okay, that's what I was, that's
Yeah.
why I did the math for.
But
Okay.
all that matters is getting 81 more votes. It doesn't matter which town you get them from.
Anyone more
It's-
yes votes?
You don't have to win both towns. You just have to
Right.
win more than you lose overall.
So, Community Coalition, do you want us investing time in trying to create that in each of the 2 towns?
I feel like the people who voted are going to vote again. I don't know.
Right. I can work on being more verbal, personally, around, that sort of thing, so I don't really know how big you want the coalition.
I mean, the idea is just to get people who are wanting to get information out. I mean, that's been our biggest hurdle, is getting information out and getting people to understand it, because we're battling this statewide narrative. And when you really look at the data, I can't think of many people who listened to our budget presentations that left thinking we were still spending too much money comparatively.
Right, I think all the questions were answered then.
Yeah.
So, okay. Statement.
What?
I'm not gonna vote because it's gonna cost me 15% more in taxes. This is what was said, okay? So, how do you answer that?
So,
The state is gonna pay, they're increasing our taxes 15%, so I'm not gonna vote the school thing in.
so they're
I mean, I know
listening to
in
the
my mind
number
what to
from the
say, but-
state.
Yeah, that's what they say, is that they hear that 15% of the
It was
property
12.
tax.
It was
Okay.
12%, I got it too.
12%.
Okay.
No, but what she's saying is
20.
they're saying 15 to 20%, like the statewide narrative. What people are saying on the news is a percentage, and what
Yes.
they're not saying
Right,
is
that's,
that this is an average across the state, and each of you has some unique differences depending on where you live.
Mhm.
And, you know, one of the things that Morgan and I heard back is that we must be, and that this came from a community that had a 1% tax rate increase, that we must not be telling the truth because the statewide narrative said 15 to 20%. So the reality is we are not in the same place that other parts of the state are. Like,
Right.
we have said this and
Right.
shown this in every way that we can. So I think that in Richford, I think that what you can say back is the last version, they were at, I think, 13% increase. But I think when you go back, Courtney, can you go back to slide,
Like in the beginning.
yeah, 7. So, right there. So if you look at that, I think that they looked at, and this was a part of the conversation we had with the principals, the way we created that visual, it showed what their impact was on their house value, and many of them only looked at Richford, and they saw 13%, and then they looked at Enosburg, and they saw 1%. And I think that there was some, that's not fair, they're only going up 1%, and we're going up 13.
Right.
But look at the actual dollars that taxpayers are paying in Enosburg for a $100,000 home compared to what people in Richford are paying for the same $100,000 home. So I think that it has to be put into context for them that it is 13% for you, unfortunately, because of that reappraisal.
Yeah, that's what's kicking that.
Right, and that was version 2. The number is likely to be different as we, continue to make these cuts. But they need to look at the context of you right now in version 2, we're 259 out of 260 towns in Vermont in terms of your lowest tax rate. Like, we can't cut that much more without putting Richford High School and Enosburg High School in jeopardy of not being able to draw in enough tuition students to be able to operate.
Right.
So I think that, do you want to say the piece about the 981 compared to the floor? Like, what's the lowest they possibly could?
We can figure out a way to show this to voters, but as I said earlier in the meeting, if you cut 10 million out of this budget and close a couple schools, that 981 can only drop so much. It's like 940 something. And then they're at the floor. So you cut 20 million out and they would still pay that 940 or 943, whatever that number was.
I think that's what we need to focus on. That's what people don't understand.
And
That we're near the floor.
Those kids to a school. What's that? We still have to be able to send those kids to a school.
Right.
But also the number is lower, so any increase is a higher percentage, too, is another way to look at it. Right, on the Richford side.
Okay.
So what other, back to the communication piece, do you want us to be sending a mailer out this time? We definitely heard from the other side that people wanted a piece of paper in their mailbox. And when we do have a population that is difficult to get to.
They wanted a book in their mailbox.
They did want a book. Mailer? No mailer?
I say mailer.
Yeah.
The other piece is one strategy that I didn't utilize. I didn't try to engage with our specific local legislators. I will likely do that this time. I would ask you if you wanted to consider doing that yourselves, to ask for them to really look at, what's going on with our budget. Maybe we could even send an invitation for them to join us at your meeting, if that's something you wanted us to do. The one for next week?
Yes.
Yes.
And we did not utilize the messenger. And I think that was something right before we were getting ready to vote. There were some letters to the editor that showed up in there, and there were people reading them. So that might be something that I choose to do. You also could choose to do it if you wanted to either collectively as a board put something out as a letter to the editor, which we also could share in a variety of our media ways, or you could do it individually. And we're happy to help if you need, like, Sarah, that language piece.
Yeah, that's
What do you think about it? Like a talking point for that kind of FAQ?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could try to do a talking point document for you as well.
I think that our talking point document that we made last time, maybe we could make it a little bit smaller this time.
Yeah.
To help.
Yeah. But it's a little simpler because we have 2 towns that were rather than not all of them this time. So anything else you want us to consider in terms of communication planning? Okay. I think that's all we have for budget. So I'll jump into my session.
Yes,
if that-
please.
That's okay. So under personnel, you have some action items. You have Enosburg Elementary, Lydia Charbonneau for grade 5 teacher. Richford Elementary, Jeremy Sanborn for music teacher, and Janine Brady for literacy interventionist. So I'd ask the board for a motion to approve those hirings.
Okay, do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Sarah made a motion. Josh?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Under resignations at Enosburg Elementary, you have Jill Lagus, grade 5 teacher, Kelly Coda, Enosburg High School school nurse, and Jack McMullen, a high school math teacher. Ask the board to make a motion to approve those resignations.
Do you have a motion?
Motion.
Rachel made a motion. Josh?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Mort, do you want me to read the open positions, or do you just, Courtney? There you go. Do
right
you
now.
want it to just be posted?
Yeah, just post it right
Okay.
now.
So we're actively interviewing, but right now I have put a freeze on hiring any of these positions until we know where we're gonna land with the budget. So when we come back, unless you wanna give me direction tonight on this, when we come back next week, you're going to have to tell me what to do with the remaining positions, because the principals have several people already that they would like to be able to offer contracts to fill some of the remaining positions, and for right now, I'm not approving that.
Right. Want to hold till next week? You guys good with that? Hold till next week.
I know that's not what they were hoping to hear, we're going to lose some of those candidates, but I understand if that's what you're gonna choose to do. The last thing I have under personnel is requests for unpaid leave. Jay Farnham, your PE teacher over at Richford High School, middle high school, senior high school, sorry. He is short a half day, so he's asking for an unpaid half day of leave. So I'd ask the board to make a motion to approve that.
Okay, do I have a motion for unpaid?
I'll make the motion.
Sarah made the motion. Josh?
Aye.
Rachel? I'm an aye.
I don't have anything under student, but we have some really cool pictures there. I don't know if any principals want to tell us what we're looking at there. We've got District Music Festival. Is that right, Courtney?
Yeah, I can explain that. The first picture on the top is Enosburg Middle School. Lynn was right, the District Music Festival. Next to them is the Enosburg High School softball team eating a meal together. On the bottom left is Richford Junior Senior High School prom. That was this past Friday.
This is prom court.
This is the prom court. In the middle, on the bottom, RES, Richford Elementary School 5th graders. They replaced American flags at the cemetery.
Very nice.
And at the bottom right corner is Cold Hollow students who were, I believe, on college campus tours. And Enosburg Elementary School, I couldn't find any, I'm sorry.
Next time you get two, Jen.
Yes. You didn't get my chicken picture?
They did a beautiful job with the space for prom at Richford.
I
got
heard
to work
that.
up at the Phoenix House that night, and I walked in and they just did a phenomenal job with
That's
that
awesome.
space. They really did.
I enjoyed the pictures of that, Beth. It was
Just
beautiful.
beautiful.
So I owed you a board report from last time because I tried to give you NMV data at our ER meeting. So this is, I'll send this out to you at the end of the meeting so you can take a deeper dive into this. But we'll go through here. You can tell me to slow down if you want me to, or I'll just zoom through. It's up to you. This first, this is quarterly attendance data, and this across the bottom is by school. So it goes Richford High School, Enosburg High School, Richford Junior High, Richford Elementary, Enosburg Middle School, and Enosburg Elementary School. So you're looking at your student attendance data percentage by school. Blue represents full day attendance, and the orange, I believe, reflects that they were there at least a partial day and they were in the system. What percentage of students were in the system at least part of the day? It jumped out to me. Can you go back one, Courtney? At first, I was like, "Oh gosh, the high school full day attendance rate is pretty low." But then I reminded myself of how much work-based learning we're doing with our students, and a lot of them are off campus for those work-based experiences and co-ops. So this next one is by grade. So again, you can see a dip as we get up into some of the older grades. Blue is full day, again reflected on this. This is by weekday. For whatever reason, Thursday seems to be the day that we have the lowest attendance rate, and surprisingly, more kids come to school on Mondays. By month, I have no idea why we have 100% in July, because I'm pretty sure that's not real. I'm sure why that data's there.
We're very proud.
Yeah, we're proud of that attendance data. But you can see where we've had some dips, and certainly those winter months are lower, starting to see an uptick in May. The next is by ethnicity. And the final is by gender. The girls are still coming to school more than the boys are in this data. And I think that that brings us to legislative update. And I'm going to turn that over to my friend Morgan, who spent a lot of time working on legislative issues this session.
And a lot of this is going to be repetition, or just kind of the final chapter in a long, not so interesting story. The PCB testing delay bill was killed in the Senate, so there's been no changes to that law, and so we are now moving forward with scheduling testing for Richford High School, which is the last of our schools that need initial testing.
Not the high school.
No.
High school.
So yours hasn't done it yet either?
No.
Okay, so our 2 high schools. Senate miscellaneous education bill had a lot of small things that would have been positive changes. That was also killed in the Senate. And those are not going to resurface this year. There was a bill that allows students to apply sunscreen at school without a doctor's note, which was not a problem I knew that we had, but that's been corrected. Some clarifying changes around the open meeting law bill. I've not really drilled into this, but I think it was around whether we were still going to be required to have a physical location for hybrid meetings. And so we'll...
It is both.
Okay.
You're required to do both online and in person.
Gotcha. So no change to how we are operating now.
For us.
For us. We just don't have the option to change it. There was a public libraries bill that may require us to update our library materials selection policy. I don't know a lot of details about that, but I think it's pretty minor in terms of the school side. There's a literacy bill that saw a lot of changes in conference committee, and I've not looked at those yet. I don't know if you have any background on it.
I think the one thing that was, there's a heavy shift around the science of reading, which we're well positioned for with the shifts that we're making in our literacy programs. But there was a piece of that in the original legislation they were going to require, I think it was 45 hours of every teacher, no matter what their content was, 45 hours of professional learning around the science of reading, and I think that made its way out of the bill at the end of the session, which we're going to invest a ton of resource into professional learning. So I was relieved that they took that out.
The so-called BOCES bill passed, and this was the bill that gives supervisory unions and school districts the ability to kind of form partnerships together that would create an additional board They could own property, they could run programs, they could hire staff, similar to how we ran early ed 2 decades ago here, and how places like New York State do their tech centers and their special education. This is something that I think has gotten some traction in the southern part of the state. There's no requirement to do it, although there'll be a requirement for us to at least discuss it at a future meeting. There's a school construction bill that passed. There was really no positive changes to construction state aid other than another study committee or an extension of a study committee to look at how we're going to ramp that back up. One positive change was that the threshold for high-cost construction projects went from $500,000 to $2 million. So the reason when we bid out the Richford wood chip boiler project, we had to go through a couple of extra steps because it was anticipated being over $500,000. They've eased that process a little bit, which should actually make bidding more competitive because you'll have more contractors willing to go through that. The last bill that we touched on is the yield bill that was passed. It is anticipated that the governor is going to veto that. I think we've gone over this in earlier meetings, but in addition to setting the yield, it is going to require the Agency of Ed to come up with some recommended standards for reserve funds. It raises some new money with a surcharge on Airbnb rentals, and it removes some exemptions from the sales tax. It increases the amount of income sensitivity payments for this year only for folks who are paying based on their income. It makes some changes to how the CLA is calculated, which we've gone over in the past, and it's going to be difficult in year 1, and then year 2 and on it'll probably help to mute the impact of the CLA. And then it returns the excess spending threshold, which has never impacted any of our districts here, but for districts that spend more than, I think it's now 118% of the average, they are double taxed for that amount over that 18%. And so that puts more money into the ed fund, and it helps the yield, which helps everybody.
Picture where that top black line was on that visual, 118% above that.
When it was at 120%, I think the legislature took testimony that it would only impact about 10 districts. So it's really only targeting the high flyers. But if that does become law again, eventually they'll probably use that as a tool and play with that percent each year. And I think that is all of at least the most importance. You'll be getting something from the School Boards Association probably in a couple of weeks. I would guess before the veto session.
Any questions for Morgan? Okay, the last thing I have is graduation representation. So each year we generally have a board member who attends each of the graduations. And this year you have Richford High School graduation on June 14th, 7, Beth. And Enosburg's graduation is at 11 on the 15th. 11, Beth?
Yes.
Okay. So is anybody?
I'll do Richford.
Okay. What will do Richford?
Enosburg.
I can do it.
Yeah, doesn't matter to me.
Are you sure? So I can go if you'd like. No, I can do it.
So
Sarah,
Rachel,
did we have fun last year?
We did.
So you need to have
it
fun.
was very
I'm
fun.
gonna prepare myself so I don't fall the Sarah thing. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. That's all I have.
Rachel, you will have many years of attending graduation.
I know. I'm gonna have 2 in high school next year and 2 in elementary school, so we kind of close the gap a little bit. So.
Yeah.
So only 2 instead of 3 schools?
Yeah.
Wow.
4 school.
It's really, yeah.
So, 2 years. I'll be a junior. Okay.
Okay, principal's report, Kelly.
All informational.
All right, Beth.
I just have one thing to add, and I have one action item. We are having a play Wednesday and Thursday, 7:30 at the town hall. Students from Enosburg and Richford, The Importance of Being Earnest. And it wasn't publicized at the time of my board report, so I just wanted you to know. So this is the 15th and 16th, which is Wednesday and Thursday of this week. And then I sent you all a letter from EF and Nikki Jacobs asking for one additional exchange student for next year. The policy says 5. We have 5 students signed up. They're asking for one additional.
Any discussion on that? How are you guys feeling on that? Good?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then. We'll go to 6.
Make motion.
Okay, Sarah made the motion. Josh?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Thank you. So Beth, just to confirm, that play is tomorrow and Thursday.
Tomorrow and
Okay.
Thursday, yes.
Tomorrow, Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. Jen?
All information.
All information. Okay, Matt?
We've got the annual request from Lions to use the school parking lot and property for the Dairy Festival. Dairy Days.
Alright, we still have everything in place from last year about the smoking and everything.
Yeah, it would be the same
So
rules,
good.
and you get their insurance
Okay.
piece, we'll take care of all those.
Do you need a motion on that?
Yeah.
Okay, need a motion for Lions?
Motion.
Rachel made the motion. Josh?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
I'll let them know. Thank you.
Just so you know, the smoking piece, we like enforce during setup, but not over the weekend.
How would you enforce
You can't.
I know. Water is all leave.
From the week.
Okay.
Hopefully the school is able to do that, so.
Alright, and that brings up to Nate.
Okay, I have a quick presentation,
Right.
and so I'll make it quick. So I'm required by federal law to report out to my governing board about the measures that we get evaluated on. So I'm gonna go very quickly through that. You have access to this, you have all the resources, but I will just raise your hand if you have questions, and I will answer them. So we'll go next slide. So the first one is our academics. You'll see that we are at 33%, 32.97. Next year, in 2 years, our target's 32%. The Vermont average is 44%. We are not at the Vermont average because we don't have a full day center and we do not have academic teachers. So the centers that are doing well have English class and math classes in their centers. And so until we hire those people to do that, we're still gonna be probably lower, although we are getting better. So you'll see the same thing on math. We'll go to the next one. And we are better at math in our school than we are at reading and writing, which is probably average for tech center.
Can I just slow you down a little bit?
Yes, you
Because
can.
this is important, so.
I'm staying with it, so it's.
Go back one.
Okay.
Go back one. I know that it's 8:10, but I think this is important information, and I don't want him to go so fast that you don't receive it, and I know you wanna go home.
No, that's all right. I'll
But
slow
I
down.
want you to hear this information. Can you explain
Sure.
how the target is derived?
Sure. So the current target doesn't really exist. The FY25, the AOE looks at your last 3 years of data and they come up with an average. And they say this is what we want your target as. I could argue to go higher or lower. And in most cases, I just agreed with the AOE on what their targets were. That's how the targets are. And I have to do this report every 2 years. The instructions for the report are like 58 pages, so it's just really fun work.
And when they go back and look at this, Nate, what you're showing with your data is 5 out of the 22 students in auto scored at a level 5, 6, or 7.
Correct. And so you can score anywhere from a 3 to 7, and they're asking you to be at least at a 5. So you'll see that in math, our construction students and forestry students and our teacher prep are better in math. If you go back one, you'd see that our business students and education and medical careers were better at the ELA stuff, which is probably to be expected.
And do juniors and seniors have to take this?
So we're gonna get there. So let's just skip ahead. So let's just skip ahead a couple slides to one more slide. Skip that because that shows the next one over there. One more. Okay. And so when they come to us, so this is the fall. The graph on the left. the big graph, that is the fall of 2021. So when our juniors come in the fall, we have to test them. And then in 2 years when they graduate, those are the class of 23, we test them again when they leave. The final day for this year's class is tomorrow, May 15th. And so you'll see that the growth they had with us in those 2 years, they went from math being blue, they were about just over 22% of our students being proficient in that test, to up almost at 45%. And so even though my teachers are not academic teachers, we put in the effort to try to get better at teaching those math and English and language arts. And overall, we're doing better. And so just so you know, our emphasis is on employability first, technical standards second, and academic third. And we try to do that every single day in our, but we definitely don't disregard the academics. The next slide.
Applied math and workplace documents?
Yes.
Can you just quickly tell them the difference
Sure.
between those two?
So give the card back. So yes, the different applied math is just anything from like a variety of workplace math skills, right? So in workplace documents, it's procedures, it's letters, so they have to spend a lot of time reading. What we found is a lot of our students don't have the perseverance to read for an hour. It's reading about, 7 or 8 different passages and answering 2 or 3 questions. And a lot of our students tell us after that we just gave up on it. We
Is
just
it
stopped.
on the computer, Nate?
Yep.
I find that a lot of students do better when they can hold the paper than they do reading on a computer for a sustained period of time.
Yeah. So maybe I don't know if we can get a paper copy each test.
Well, I just think that's true of like the Cognia too.
Right.
Or anything. I think that students would do better if they had paper.
Right. Okay, I'll slow it down a little bit.
Can I move forward?
You can. So the last 3 years, this is the growth that we've had in each of the areas. Again, I'm very proud of our teachers of taking the curriculum and helping our students move forward on this test. So we have seen some quite a bit of growth, especially in math, where I do think our teachers are a little bit more well-versed in instructing. So I think that's just some good growth that we've had. That's the academic piece. The next thing we're evaluated on is our graduation rate. Last year, we had 100% of our students graduate. Our target is 93%. So we are excelling there. This year, we might not be at 100%, but that's...
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So if I had a student from Richford who started in a program like medical careers as a junior, and then part of the way through the junior year came back to and didn't finish medical careers.
As long as they were considered a concentrator, which is halfway through their junior year.
So they had to be counted, they have to be halfway through the junior year. So you could start at the beginning of your junior year, drop out after the first quarter, and they don't count as a dropout for you.
Right, they have to be a concentrator, which is 1 semester at Coldwater Career Center. So, yep.
So in our high schools, they have to attend 1 day. I don't even think they have to attend. They have to register in your school and be included in Power School. And then if they drop out or don't, they count as a dropout for your school. Just wanted to point out the difference.
And they can re-enroll and drop out again, they count twice. But.
No, I think they only count once, I'm not sure. Don't laugh,
that used to be that way. It used to be that way when I was assistant principal there, yes, right? So, okay. The next thing that we are graded on is we have to have non-traditional program concentration. Again, concentration is spending at least a semester with us over the last 4 years. It's up and down, and we're at the class of 2023. We're at 6.85% were non-trad. That's males and female dominated classes or females and male dominated fields. Currently, we're at 10.3, and our target for next year is 8.5. So we're ahead of that. We have where we are lacking now. We have 3 girls in auto, 2 girls in construction, 2 girls in forestry. We are lacking on the other side. We don't have any. We have 1 boy in medical careers and 1 boy graduating from human services. So in the female fields, we don't have males. So we're actually doing well getting the females in the male dominated fields. And that's where we spent that's where we targeted a lot of our work. Next one. And that kind of explains the current year is where, like I said, automotive 12% non-trad. And business is not a male or female dominated, so that doesn't count. But you can look at education. Last year we had zero males, and medical we had 0 males. So again, we're improving there. Next one. Post-secondary credentials, we have to have, our students have to earn post-secondary credentials. That's LNA, CDL, GAMA logging, NCCR, and we've done very well there. Recently we had 58%. Our target was 38%. So, and again, that stat is, you'll see that only half of our programs offer credentials. And if you go to the next slide, I think it's education, and we don't have a credential for education. We don't actually have a credential for business. However, if you score 6 or 7 on 3 work keys tests, there's a national credential that they're counting. But that's how some of the business kids got a credential. But automotive, it's ASE certification, Vermont State Inspection. Construction's NCCR, National Construction Curriculum, and forestry, GAMA logging, medical careers, LNA. Next year they're actually going to have LNA and medical assisting. So they're going to be getting 2 things there. So, all right. We also have to have offer post-secondary credits, college credits. So again, this past class of 2023, 30% of our students earned college credits. Our target was 29%, and we don't know where we are this year. And we'll hit the next one. Next slide, and that's again, automotive, construction, and forestry don't offer college credits. They could if our teachers had master's degrees, and then they could offer some, but those teachers do not have master's degrees, so they can't teach. They can't teach for CCV, or but they also are not required to. So that's fine. We're doing well where we're supposed to be doing well. We're also judged on our participation in work-based learning. Last year, we only had 53% of our students in work-based learning. We needed to be at 57%, so I'll have to make a plan to increase that. But we have been improving, and we also need a work-based learning coordinator. So I just want to shout out to Sarah Jo, who's taken that on this year. With the paperwork next year, if we don't hire one because of lack of funds, then it'll be a group effort of trying to manage that. I'll be doing site visits, teachers will be doing site visits and whatnot. So, but then on the breakdown, as you can see which students did, and there's, if you average that up, it wouldn't come up to 53%. That was still counting a year of digital media, which was at 0%. So that hurt our numbers. But okay, the next one. We have to figure out where our kids are after they graduate. So 6 months after graduation, we need to contact them. We've done a very good job of staying in touch with our students. So they need to either be in post-college, military, or employed. And we were able to reach them all last year, and they were all doing one of those things. Not necessarily employed in an area that they went to school for, but employed. So that's a huge, that's our goal, is having them being productive somewhere. And we're hitting that very well. We need to make sure we're aligned to labor market things. All of our programs are aligned to where there are jobs. There's construction jobs, there's forestry, CDL, heavy equipment, teaching jobs, so medical career jobs. So we are doing very well in that. So I think we can kind of breeze through that. Just go slow, make sure we don't miss anything. Let's go to the next one. Yep, we're meeting the needs. Like I said, our strengths are the employability skills. We have our program advisory boards, and every one of our employers is saying, if you just have them show up and be dependable, have a good attitude, we can teach them the rest. And it's really just that is something we stress. It doesn't always work. We still have attendance issues, and they say, well, start paying me and we'll come, but we're not there. All right, let's skip through. All of our programs have to so I'll just let you know what we need to have. They need to have the appropriate size. So here's our enrollment data for the last 4 years. Again, our enrollment really is dependent on the class size of Enosburg and Richford. So this year we're in one of our smallest areas, and next year we're going to be back up to one of our highest. So, and then the only program that is facing low enrollment is our Human Services Teacher Prep program. For some reason, people don't want to be teachers. I can't understand why. But we're really trying to sell that they also can learn. They also are learning child psychology and sociology classes. So we are going to try to be marketing it a little bit more, that there are at least some good college classes you could take that might be beneficial if they're headed to college.
There are also mental health and human service careers that they could go
Yes.
into
Yep.
with this program. So one good piece for you, Nate, and we talked about this during our last school visit, is this year's junior class and senior class are much, much smaller than this year's 7th grade class and 8th grade class. So you can expect for the next 2 years beyond this to see some pretty good growth
Yeah.
if your percentages maintain. the
Yeah,
same
we
levels.
have waiting lists in 4 of our programs, and it's usually only happened in auto. But it's not, well, it's cool, but it's not, because kids are like wanting to get in, and we don't have space for them. So so auto, construction, and forestry can only have a max of 15 until and then they'll need a teaching assistant because of the safety in lab spaces. And I think I already talked about each program has to have either a tier 2 credential or a college credit offered to it. Each program has to have a career technical student organization, and we offer those 3. They have to have active program advisory boards, and they have to all offer work-based learning, and we're hitting all those standards. And those are the IRCs, or how many credits you receive attending those programs. So ASC in MLE is something, or light repair engine, I'm not sure. And game logging really should not be called game logging, because it's not a game. It's just really how to cut down trees safely. So, all right. Again, other considerations that we have to make sure we have to have at least 5 active members in our program advisory boards. They meet twice a year, and they go over curriculum, program needs, equipment, and things like that. That then I have to put into the Perkins application to say this is why we're spending the money this way. Just a side note, we get $79,000 next year, and I'm doing the same amount of work as Essex, who gets $500,000. So I'm just not happy about that. But anyway.
I do just want to say, we have a regional advisory board for Cold Hollow and Northwest Tech. And one of the barriers that they were talking about is they have struggled with their program advisory boards and getting people to come out, and I don't think you have been. Cold Hollow has done they're in a great place in terms of people wanting to serve on those advisory boards.
Yeah, I've been very lucky.
Yeah.
Faculty staff recruitment, we'll just hit the next slide. I've been very lucky. I've only had to hire 1 new teacher, and that was in construction. We do need a work-based learning coordinator, and our retention is pretty good. And our survey data is in the resources, so you can look at all of our survey results across the board at the end if you want to. And we do not have any licensing issues right now, but we do not have a lot of turnover, and that's awesome. It's very hard to hire people from industry into the education field right now. Where our development's going to be, we're going to continue to work on integrated academics. We did this past year, we took a class in Universal Design for Learning. So all of our teachers worked on their curriculum and lesson planning with a UDL lens. We'll continue to work on the non-trad, and we'll continue to do industry specific to make sure that we can offer those tier 2 IRCs. And AOE is obviously trying to do non-trad enrollment across the state as well. And next one. We got to work on improving equity and access, and that's around just making sure that we are making sure all students have access to our center. In the graduating class last year, that's what we had for graduates. And those are also the special populations, as they call them, and there's also other ones such as homelessness, and but we didn't have we didn't have any of some of the other ones. These are the only ones that we had. And when you break down the data, actually a lot of our economically disadvantaged were in non-trad positions, and they did fairly well on the assessments as well. So that was good to see. And just things that we need to do to just make sure that we are making sure everybody has equity and access to our center. We're really working on more outreach. We're going to we have all the 8th graders come. Actually, the Richford and Enosburg 8th graders are coming June 4th, and we've already had all the other schools come in December. And we'll continue to just make sure that we try to get every single student to our center so they can see what career options they have available. And just a couple areas of strength. You guys have seen this, but out of 100 and whatever students, 12, we had 99 responded. My program teacher treats them with respect. 100% said they agree with that. Next one. Students by program treatment with respect, 99% said that is true. Next one, students treat staff and teachers with respect, 99% said that's true. And if you spend some time in our building, you know that that is true. It's an amazing culture. And then the students that did not attend CHC, we have to report on that. And most of them say they are aware of the programming. And again, these surveys are available so there's 30 questions, so you can see kind of what people are saying. So none of them disagree that they did not know what was going on. The next one
Does that go to
is,
juniors and seniors in the high schools?
what's that?
Who does that part of the survey go to?
Juniors and seniors at the high school.
Okay, okay.
All of them, there were 15 responded.
And that's why, and you see that I only got 15% because I have 15 respondents because they see an email from me and they're like,
They're sick of surveys.
they probably are. And again, so I was encouraged by my school counselor and teachers to explore opportunities. 60%, and this is not always the case. There's a lot of schools that do not let their students kind of know what's going on at their tech centers. But our two sending schools are very good at making sure that they know what offerings are there. So, and that's, I think that's not the same. That's not the case throughout the state. So, thank you guys for letting your students attend the tech center.
We appreciate the dinner you throw for the two of us every year.
Yeah. Parents had to respond. And again, this is an area they were very pleased that their students are enrolled. On the next one. And what do we need to do? Okay, we need to continue to work on our work keys assessments, continue to align our academic proficiencies. We'll be working hard in services with Portrait of a Learner that's coming out. We will make sure that our students will have a lot of opportunities to provide evidence toward their Portrait of a Learner. No longer is it just if you come to construction you get a math credit, but you're going to have evidence of math that you can use towards your graduation. One of the things before the budget went down was, do we hire an academic integrationist to make sure that we can do that? But we'll wait on that one. And then we need to continue to strengthen access for all of our students from our sending schools. More outreach to the under students. And the next one. Yeah, we need to update our building and our classroom spaces, our lab spaces. We need to continue to engage the community employees to ensure that they're getting work-based learning opportunities and keep increasing all non-trad, and I think that's everything. And those are some of the resources you guys all can spend some time looking at, and I would say it's worth it. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation. I get to keep the card? Is that all right? Okay. Oh, perfect. And if I didn't say it, May 29th at the Enosburg Auditorium is our awards ceremony, and it's an awesome event. So, questions? It's a lot of information, but I assure you our kids are doing very, very well when they're coming and leaving Cold Harbor Center.
And I appreciate the time you spent. I know this has taken you a lot of time. This is a big task to produce this report every couple of years, and you created visuals that really show growth this year. And I know that the work keys, the transition to work keys was a little tricky, but I appreciate the efforts that you've taken and your staff has taken in order to support students and their learning around the types of skills that are required in those assessments.
I think the most impressive piece to me was the fact that you checked back with kids that have been in the program, and 100% of them are working, maybe not in what they took there,
right,
but they're all working or going on or doing something like that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's amazing.
That's what it's about.
Okay. All right.
So do you need a motion from them?
Do we need a motion for anything?
No, I do not need a motion. I just need to make sure
Good
you're
job.
aware of what is going on in our center.
Right. Okay, board business, next meetings, not gonna be June 11th now, now it's gonna be
It is. Well, no.
May 20th. And then, okay, any future agenda items?
Okay.
Budget.
Okay. Alright, so if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Sarah's made a motion, Josh,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
I'm out. Meeting adjourned.